Okay, so in terms of a space-time diagram, which I've written down here, I've put a bunch of events on the space-time diagram in a particular reference frame. Okay, and I've put one event at the origin of this reference frame, A. Okay, and we can then, from what we've discussed in terms of the interval being greater than 0, less than 0, or equal to 0, we can actually categorize the differences, the interval between two events on a space-time diagram simply by looking at it. Okay, so for example, time-like intervals are intervals between events that where the events happen within a particular light cone. So I've drawn the dotted lines on this space-time diagram here are the this is the light cone. These are the world lines of a photon, the light lines with respect to A. So this is like if A sent out a signal in two different directions, plus x and minus x, at time equals 0 in position and from its own position, then those would be the world lines of those photons. Okay, so those are the light cone. That's the light cone. So events which happen within the light cone of event A, those are time-like intervals. So for example, AB is a time-like interval. AC is also a time-like interval. Now there are other time-like intervals. I've referenced this particular light cone to event A, but you could draw light cones, for example, with respect to other events like C. Okay, and here we see that event E may be within the light cone of event C, that is going down in the negative time, which would mean that C and E would be related by a time-like interval. F and B would be definitely related by a time-like interval, because if I drew, actually they happen at the same position in space already in this reference frame. Okay, so that's a time-like interval. Now space-like intervals are those events which happen outside the light cone. Okay, remember, anything which has a slope, any world line which has a slope greater than less than 45 degrees, so in this region here, okay, those are things that are superluminal, happen, the lines which connect those, the world lines which connect those two events are superluminal. They have speeds faster than the speed of light. Okay, so events, interval AD would be a space-like interval. Okay, and that means that there's no proper time, as we discussed. There's no proper time for the interval AD. So A and D in no reference frame would happen at the same point in space. Okay, so there's no proper time. So AD is a space-like interval, and so is AE. And there are others. If you draw light cones with respect to each of these individual events. And finally, those events which lie on the world line of a photon are light-like. So for example, AF and AG. Okay, and again, there are maybe others if you draw the light cone from other individual events. I've referenced all these, this light cone to event A, but of course there's as many light cones as there are events. Okay, so to summarize what we just showed with the space-time diagrams, events that stay within their respective light cones are time-like. Events that are across the respective light cones from one another are space-like, and events that are on a light cone are time-like. And the basic the differences between these different categorizations are that they have different causal properties. For example, events which are space-like cannot be causal. That is, one event cannot have caused another, because in order to do so, the information from one to the going from one to the other must travel faster than the speed of light. And since that can't happen, we know that those two events one cannot have caused the other. And so the different causal properties, so that's important.